Hi everyone, Lisel Crowley here at the Cool Tool Studio. Today I'm going to show you a really wonderful project. It's how to put color on metal clay two different ways using the same design. And we're going to use a scratch foam design, which I'm going to make in two different ways. One with colored pencil and resin, and the other with alcohol ink. To do this project, we're going to need a rolling pin, mineral spirits and a brush, a template, colored pencils, resin, scratch foam, a hand drill, ball styluses or ball styli, agate burnisher, some tough cards, alcohol inks, clay of choice. I'm using Easy 960 sterling silver clay, cool slip, and sanding materials. Let's get started. Okay, so the first step to create these earrings is to create the design in the scratch foam. And this is the way the scratch foam comes packaged. And this is the actual size of the scratch foam piece. I actually like to cut them down into smaller sizes. I find it easier to work with. For the earrings, I'll probably use this size, but if I were going to use a larger piece, I might use this size. This is half of the original size of the board, and this is a quarter. So the other thing we're going to use for this are these beautiful Zim stylus. I love these. They're elegant, they feel great in the hand, and they work fantastic. I'm going to work with the XST01, which is the smallest one. The first step is to prepare your scratch foam. And one of the things you want to do is look at it from on both sides, and one side will appear slightly smoother. Sometimes it's easy to see, sometimes not so easy. In this case, I believe it's this side that is the smoother side. So I'm going to work on this side, and I'm going to spritz it with some cool slip and rub that in. And one thing I like to do is just run my roller over it a couple of times. And I feel that that helps smooth the top surface and compresses it down even more. It also really distributes that lubricant very thoroughly over the surface of the scratch foam. Now I've got these beautiful dragon wing templates here, and this is what I'm going to use to create my design. And I'm going to work in this size because I'm going to make a pair of earrings. You could work larger if you want. I like this size. So I'm going to hold my template down, and I'm going to work with, each stylus has two tips. One is smaller and one is larger. For the outer edge, I'm going to use the wider tip. One of the secrets with scratch foam is not to press too hard at first. So as I go around, I'm putting firm pressure, but I'm not pressing super hard. And each time I go around, I press harder. And I'm going to go around maybe 2 or 3 times, and sometimes I'll also go in the opposite direction 2 or 3 times. And that just gives you a very deep and crisp outer outline. Now I'm going to do the same wing going in the opposite direction and do the exact same thing, get my outline. So I'm going around once, one way, and then the other way. So I've got my 2 outlines of my earrings. Now I'm going to come in and do my inner design, and I'll do one, get it to where I like it, and then sort of copy it on the opposite side. I like to do my designs free form. I like to just kind of go with the flow and create my designs. But if you wanted to, you could draw out a design, tape it down over the top, and trace it to get your design if you want to sort of play with it that way. But I just find that I work better with a free form or freehand design. So I'm going to just start. And for this, I'm using the finer point. And again, you want to go fairly light at first and then deepen the line as you go. Okay? And now I'll do some lines. Now, bear in mind that what these are going to be are different cells that we'll color in later, either with the colored pencil or with the alcohol inks. So I don't like to make them too tiny. I want to have room to get in there and color them. You could also use these metal clay pieces for enamel. And I'm going to go now to the wider tip and make some little impressions that will look like little balls of clay after. Okay, so there's one done. And now I'll do the other one. Okay, so here's my finished pair of earrings, and I just want you to note that I have the designs going in opposite directions. They're not a completely perfect match, but you can clearly see that they go together. You could also do a completely asymmetrical pair of earrings. They could each be this different shape, they could have different designs inside. The sky's the limit as to what you decide to do with it, but for this particular pair, I've made them kind of go together. The other thing I want to say about this is that now that you have this design in your scratch foam, if you take care of it, it can be reused over and over and over again. So I'm going to use it just like I'd use any texture, and it has already been lubricated because I lubricated it before I made the design. So for this roll of clay, I won't need to lubricate it. But if it was sitting around or you know, the lubrication had been used up, you would want to lubricate it just like you would any other texture. So I'm going to start by rolling my clay out 5 cards thick. And I tend to go a little thicker on my first roll with scratch foam because I want to make sure that I have enough clay to get really into the design. I'm just going to roll this way. So I get it nice and smooth. And now I'm going to place it on my scratch foam. And you can see that it's not completely covering the design, but that's okay because if I roll in that direction, it will ultimately cover the design and I'll get a good impression. I'm going to put my 2-card thick frames on the scratch foam and I'm going to roll with a very firm, even pressure. And there you see, let me just unroll this onto a tough card. You see my 2 earrings ready to go. Next step is to cut away the excess. First, I like to cut away most of it before I do the fine cutting. And that just will keep this clay from drying out as I'm doing the fine cutting. You can roll 1 earring at a time if you prefer. If that's easier for you. I tend to like to economize on time and roll both at once, but I will put them on separate tough cards to cut them out so that I don't hurt one while I'm cutting the other out. Now you can sometimes just bring your template in and place it over the piece and use that to cut your shape. But sometimes when I do that, I lose my outer ridge. And I really like to keep that outer ridge. So I'm actually going to cut this freehand, following the line of the design. Sometimes it's easier to hold the needle tool in place and move the clay, and sometimes it's easier to hold the clay and move the needle tool. In this case, I'm choosing to move the needle tool. Any of the little unevenness in the way you're cutting can be sanded away. But I like to keep as much of that outer ridge as I can to define the shape of the piece. The other thing I'm going to do at this stage is just poke a pilot hole for my ear wire because these are going to be earrings. I will ultimately dry that out with a drill. Drill that out with a hand drill to get a nice sharp hole, but having a pilot hole just makes it go faster and easier. So now I'll cut the other earring. So here you can see I've created 2 pairs of earrings using the one scratch foam template that I created, this scratch foam template. And a couple of things I want you to notice. One is they're equally sharp. That scratch foam template can be reused over and over again, and you don't lose any quality of impression. The other thing I want you to notice is that the cutting isn't perfect, but that can be remedied when I sand. Also, there's a slight roughness on the raised areas, and that I can remedy when I sand by just very lightly sanding over the top. So the next step for these will be to dry them. I usually dry in a dehydrator, but they can also be air dried. If you're going to air dry, you want to make sure they're good and dry to the touch. Sanded, drill out the holes, then they'll be fired, and then I'll show you how to color one pair with colored pencils and one pair with alcohol inks. Okay, so here's my 4 earrings. I've sanded them all, and I'm just finishing up drilling the holes for the ear wires. And I really love this little hand drill for drilling into dry metal clay. You can really control the hole size and get a nice, clean hole for whatever you want to use. And the great thing about this tool is that all the drill bits store in the back. So you never have to go searching around your studio for that drill bit that you can't find. So I've got this ready to go, and I'm just going to go into that pilot hole. And you're going to drill, not punch, and you drill through. And you've got a perfect little hole for your ear wire. So here is one pair of the Dragonfly wing earrings that we did with the scratch foam. And this particular pair has been brushed and tumbled. This one has been colored with alcohol inks, and this one has not. So I'm going to show you how to go from this to this with just 3 colors of alcohol ink. And I want you to see how iridescent it looks. It really has that look of a dragonfly wing. So the first step is to start with a lighter color. Actually, I'm going to start with the darkest color of alcohol ink. And in this case, I'm using indigo. And the alcohol inks come in a rainbow of colors, and you can really play with colors. I tend to like blues and purples and pinks, so those are what I tend to gravitate to, but there's a whole rainbow of colors. And I'm going to just dab this on. And notice I'm wearing gloves. There's nothing really toxic in the alcohol inks, but you will have very colorful hands if you don't wear gloves. So I'm wearing gloves just to keep my hands from getting overly colored. Now I'm dabbing on some cloudy blue. And finally some raspberry. This is the raspberry. I'm just dabbing it on, I'm not applying it with a brush. The next thing I'm going to do is spritz it with a little bit of alcohol. And that will help those to blend. And then I'll pick it up and just turn it over and dab it on the paper towel. Now that you can sort of see that it's starting to blend. The cobalt is the most dominant color, so it's really standing out at this stage. So I'm going to go ahead and add some of the cloudy blue again. And you can keep adding and changing colors. There's no time when you can't. You just keep doing it until you get it where you want it. And you can see how it's getting to look a little more closely like the other one that I've done. See how it's getting closer to it. And I can, in areas where it's too dark, I can just bring in a paper towel and just lightly dab. If I have to lighten that up, I can just, again, this is the one that I have where I want it. This one I'm still working on. I'll just lightly spritz it again. Alcohol is your friend. And I'll lightly dab, and that'll just lighten it up a little. So it'll get it to that more pastel look that I have on this one. And again, I don't look for a perfect match, but I just do want them to look similar. So that is actually, for me, fine. And you can play and play and play with all the different colors. The next step is to let that ink dry just a bit, and then come in with one of these wonderful micro polish pads. I wouldn't be without these in my studio. And what I'm just going to do is rub along the outer edge. And this is to remove the excess ink that's gotten up over the outline of the piece. And then also you can just place it down and rub the piece over it. And that will bring up the silver on the raised areas. Now this one looks a little darker, but I'm happy with that. I like those two together. So the final step is to just put on some ear wires and you have a finished pair of earrings. Now the alcohol inks can be sealed. You can use a spray fixative, you can put resin over the top, but typically I like to just leave them because I like the look of the metal. If you just leave them, water will not disturb them, but alcohol will. So you just got to make sure not to get alcohol on them, and you're good to go. So this is the other pair of Dragonfly wing earrings that I did with the scratch foam. And for these, I'm going to color with colored pencil and then cover with resin. And you can see how cool that looks. It looks almost like enamel to me. And you can really play with the colors and do all kinds of things with the colored pencils on this. So I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. The first thing I want to say is this is the piece straight out of the kiln, no brushing or anything done to it. And you want to keep it like this because you need a nice rough surface for the colored pencils to adhere. I did actually brush the back of it because I'm not going to color the back of it in. And for this particular piece, I used 3 colors. I used a light green, and these are Prismacolor pencils. So I don't know how other colored pencils will work in this. Everything I've read about it and every time I've ever done it, I've always used Prismacolor. So I do recommend the Prismacolor pencil specifically. And Cool Tool sells them in a beautiful array of colors. So I'm going to start by coloring in with the light green. And then I have a light blue. And then I have a darker blue. And then you want to have some paint thinner, some mineral spirits. I think acetone can also work. And this will liquefy the pigment and spread it around more like almost a watercolor. And this will help you get it all the way to the edges of your design. And I'll just keep doing this until I get it to where I want it. Okay, so I finished coloring, and you can see it's kind of blah looking right now. What I've done is I've colored each cell, and I've used the mineral spirits to smooth it out slightly. The next step is to clean away any colored pencil that got on the raised areas, and I'm going to do that with a microfiber pad. So I'm just going to hold the microfiber pad down and rub this on it. It's a little hard to do because the piece hasn't been burnished, but I just really want to get those raised areas clean. And now I'm going to come in with an agate burnisher and burnish the raised areas so they look shiny. Because remember, I never brushed or burnished this piece out of the kiln. And I'm just going to rub that burnisher over it. I like to do the whole thing. Sometimes you got to get it from different angles to get into all the little areas that you want to get. So I've got the silver areas burnished, and now I'm going to apply the resin, and we're going to use the Magic Gloss resin, which needs to be cured with a UV light. You can cure it in direct sunlight for 5 to 10 minutes, not in a window. It has to be actually outside in direct sunlight. Or if you have a UV light, you can use that, and it's 5 to 10 minutes to get a complete cure. And what you're going to do is just generously apply it. And it'll start to settle out a little, but you're also going to use a toothpick to bring it to all the different nooks and crannies and corners. And you can see how the addition of the resin just brings this piece to life. You want to make sure you don't have a lot of air bubbles. You can sort of tap it to make sure it doesn't have air bubbles and to settle it out. And then this will go into the UV light to be cured, and then we'll put it on some ear wires and we'll have a complete pair of earrings. So here's our finished earrings. Here are the alcohol ink ones with the ear wires attached. And here's the colored pencils with the resin and the ear wires attached. And you can see exact same design, but look at how different the finished looks are. Have fun playing with different colors and different designs. Enjoy.
Visit our Learning Center at cooltools.us for more cool jewelry making videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to sign up for our email list to be the first to hear about new videos, new products, and other cool stuff from Cool Tools.